Audrey's Corner, the podcast where I talk about plays and all you have to do is press play. On this episode, we had a very special guest, Lillian Castillo. Lillian is based in Chicago and is most known for her work in the cult musical Ride the Cyclone, where she played Constance Blackwood. We had a fantastic conversation about her experience in the theater industry as a Puerto Rican and plus-sized woman, and the intersectionality those two identities create. Thank you so much for listening, and without further ado, let's press play. I saw that you went to Southern Utah University.
I sure did.
And I looked up, like, in 2013, it was like 80% of the students reported a religious affiliation with the LDS church. So, like, what was it like going to school in, like, predominantly white, predominantly conservative student population?
Difficult. In one word, difficult. I mean, in my theater department, I was the only person of Latin descent. The first 3 years I was in college. I'm Puerto Rican. I'm 100% Puerto Rican. I was born on the island of Puerto Rico. Both of my parents are Puerto Rican. Both of their parents are Puerto Rican slash of like Taino descent, which is the indigenous people of Puerto Rico. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
When people look at me sometimes, they're like, what is she? What is that? We don't know.
Yeah.
I am what we used to call ethnically ambiguous. Back then, they weren't looking for people of color. They were looking for people who might be white passing, but might possibly be a person of color. And I always was so, and I'm still unbelievably offended by it, because I'm like, first off, you are assuming that I am mixed, and there's so many other beautiful mixed people who are actually mixed, like, and so you're taking away my cultural identity by being like, oh, she's just like not one of us, but not one of them. She's somewhere in the middle. But also I'm so very proud of being Puerto Rican, that when people would be looking for Latinos specifically, and they're like, oh, she doesn't look Latino enough or Latina enough, I'd be like, wait, when did I not become enough of myself?
After the We See You White American Theater letter in 2020, have you seen, like, vast improvements, or are things kind of like slowly maybe moving forward?
So here's what I will say. So it specifically in Chicago, which is what I can speak to, the smaller, what we call storefront theaters, those theaters, I feel, very quickly started picking up on everything that they talked about in those letters, because they are generally run by younger people. They're generally run by people of more diverse people of color, different LGBTQIA people, and so they tend to be a little bit more on the pulse of what needs to change. So those theaters, I think, picked things up rather quickly. The larger houses are slowly, because that's the way it always works here in Chicago. Always. The smaller theaters do the things that they need to do more quickly. They make the changes. They open themselves up, and like, just like, because it's easy, and the bigger houses seem to think that it's not, and it really is. The letter came out in 2020, and I feel like probably in 2021 I would have been like, not in the bigger houses. 2022 I was like, yeah. 2023 I'm like, yes, I'm starting to see those things happen. And certainly there are still theaters whose management isn't interested in changing, and like, that's their choice, and it's our choice whether or not we audition for them. But for the most part, in my opinion, the union houses are starting to really change and grow and learn, and see where they can do better.
And I was curious if your relationship with your body has been influenced by your work in theater at all.
I would say probably, I would say probably in the negative ways, yes, it has. Thankfully, so I was raised by a very body positive, sex positive mom. I don't know what I would do without her. I mean, again, I had my teen years in Utah, and so there it's very much about like you don't talk about your body, you don't touch your body, you certainly don't try to do anything to make you feel good in your body. You know, and so to have a mom that was like, let me break this down for you. What are your questions? You're beautiful. Like, to feel confident in myself, that came from my mom. I always loved myself, and I loved the way I looked, and I loved the way I felt, and I loved dancing because I could feel every part of me wiggling and jiggling. And so that never was a thing. When I started working professionally, you know, it's like I said earlier, I would audition for roles and I was like, oh, I think I'd be great for this role. And let's say that role had a love interest. I wouldn't get hired because the whole idea was like, well, nobody's going to be attracted to a fat girl. And I was like, I beg to differ.
Yeah.
I am pulling so much tail. I don't know what to tell you. You know, like
I've got receipts. I got evidence.
No, I just was like, this is ridiculous. And the second that I stopped questioning what I already knew, which was that I was great at whatever size I was, and that I was capable of dancing and singing and acting just like anybody else. I was like, I can do all of this. I'm fine. And I stopped worrying about it. I stopped trying to make myself fit into the mold that they wanted. And I mean, that right there is the secret to not only succeeding in this business, but like exceeding the expectations that you have for yourself. Is embracing the things that make you different. And like, once you've embraced yourself, everybody else embraces you.
Well, that's about all I have for you. Thank you so much for talking to me. I loved that conversation. And I can't wait to tell my friends and castmates all the things we talked about today.
Absolutely. And tell them to have fun. I hope that y'all love this piece as much as we love it. I hope that it stays with you the way that it stayed with us, because man, I will be a little old lady laying in my bed and still have this show ingrained in my blood. All right. Bye.
Bye. Have a good night.
You too.